The program now continues with a little video that was prepared by Nicholas Rosnowski in the Department of Psychiatry Office of Photos of Allison, and then will be followed by reminiscences by 6 invited speakers. There will be more reminiscences at the reception after we get settled into the reception, which Vikas Sohal will chair. So now we'll have the video, and then we'll go from there. Please.
you dream of, dreams really do come true. Someday you wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind. Be where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow. Bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dare to, oh why can't oh, someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind. Be where trouble melts like a lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. And the dreams that you dare to, why, oh why can't
We now come to the scheduled reminisce speakers, and I'd just like them to ask them to come up in the order in which they're listed in the program to save time and my introducing them. So in case you don't have your program, it would be David, then Rhea, then Stephanie, then Carla, then Michele, and then Todd, in that order. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. As I watched this film I felt, why is it that we, in order to celebrate a life, have to endure a death? I had the privilege of knowing Allison as a friend and colleague for over 30 years. She, through her generosity of spirit and intellect, had an enormous impact on both my science and my psyche, particularly through the early phases of my career, and I owe a great deal of whatever I've managed to accomplish up to this point to Allison. I first met Allison when she inspired me in my postdoctoral work with Richard Axel to try to understand the molecular basis of the transdifferentiation and phenotypic plasticity that she so elegantly documented in her PhD thesis with her advisor, Paul Patterson, my colleague at Caltech, who many of you know also passed away earlier this year from brain cancer. And what was critical in my taking on this problem was going to Harvard in 1984 and meeting Allison, who had generously agreed to show me how to dissect the adrenal gland and do her adrenal chromaffin cell prep so that I could study gene regulation in those cells. And I remember what struck me about her instantly was her razor-sharp intellect, her gentleness, and her impishness, all in a remarkable package. Allison and I came to Caltech at about the same time. I started my lab there in 1986 as an assistant professor. Allison worked 2 floors up from me in Mark Kanishi's lab as a postdoc, and for the next 7 years, we became very, very close. Although there was never any romantic relationship with each other, we shared a sensibility and a sense of humor that I think was unique to me and any of the friends that I've had. We used to meet for lunch almost every day up on the 3rd floor of the Beckman Behavioral Biology building. We would go out at least once a week to dinner at a cheap Chinese restaurant called Grandview Palace, where we would sit and commiserate with each other and share our hopes and our insecurities in a way that for me, as a male, would be very difficult to share with a colleague of the same gender. And over that time, I realized that Allison was becoming my shrink and that I was becoming Allison's first long-term patient. And over the 7 years, Allison and my then wife Eve and I became very close and spent much of our available social time together. After Allison moved to San Francisco, my wife and I separated. Allison and I drifted apart a little bit. She remained very close to my wife, as did I. In fact, I sometimes felt like I lost Allison in the divorce. But we stayed close to each other, and my wife, Eve, who also unfortunately suffered from a recurrence of metastatic breast cancer, and who I know wanted to be here for this memorial, sadly passed away 2 weeks ago. And I know that she and Allison were very close and very mutually supportive as they struggled with this horrible disease. The last thing that I want to say is that Allison and I had a special little bond, which is because of 2 coincidences. Our initials are palindromes, AJD, DJA, and our birthdays, May 13th and May 14th, are back-to-back. And we always kidded ourselves about how hard we worked like drones, and so on our birthdays each year, we would send each other an email saying, "Happy birthday, palindrone." I'm gonna miss my palindrome. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rhea Kimpo. I have the distinct honor of being Allison's 2nd graduate student. And I'm really happy to be here. It's really a mini reunion for me, really. And it was nice to hear Mimi Cow's talk because it reminded me of why I went to the cerebellum after grad school. Not in the sense that I ran away from birdsong, but I was just struck with parallels between what I'm really interested in, which is how does the brain refine our movements through practice. And as you can see in the top here, it's actually the song system, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. And I just moved a little bit posterior in the back, cerebellum, a little simpler circuit. And really, I am interested in how do we use these error signals to change the activity in the system, and how does that change the behavior and the output. And of course, I learned a lot from Allison. She was an incredible mentor. I learned scientific rigor, and she used to tell me, you have to be able to look your data in the eye and figure out if it's really telling you what you think it's telling you. And she's really espoused in me that love of learning, and her enthusiasm was really just infectious, really. And right now, I teach at the college level. And I've been sort of channeling my inner Allison Doupe by being enthusiastic and also trying to instill in my students the love of learning. I'm fortunate enough to teach systems neuroscience, so that was really like a fantasy come true. And also, I wanted to just mention, it's really hard being straight after seeing that movie, mention that I really appreciated the fact that when I was in her lab, she really protected the graduate students. A postdoc had actually come up to Allison and said, oh, I can do Rhea's project. I can just do that really easily. And Allison actually told the postdoc, no, that's Rhea's project. So I was really happy that she was very protective of us. And as Corey mentioned, that she really saw us as a human being, as a person in the lab, in the lab. I remember it was not just 2 months after joining her lab that I realized, oh my God, I'm talking to my professor about the issues I have with my mother. And I was just mortified. And I just really, that's when it really hit me that Allison wanted to make that real connection with us. And I think everyone can appreciate that. I think of everything, I would mostly remember Allison's kindness to us, to her graduate students, and especially to me. I was pretty much very green when I joined her lab. She was very patient with me, with just not teaching the science, but also in my writing and presentation skills, and really everything that I am right now as a scientist is from Allison. Sorry. Thank you, Allison.
Hi there. I'm Stephanie. I was a postdoc in Allison's lab, and I count Allison as a mentor and a role model and a very close friend. And we've already heard today about the reward signal that Allison can deliver so well, which was her amazing sparkle, her smile, and it wasn't easily garner. Give me another chance at this. It wasn't like she gave this out willy-nilly. It was really hard-fought and won, and that's why I wanted to start by saying that let me get to the script here. The 4 best words ever uttered on the 8th floor of Health Sciences East were, strong work, my dear. And when I think about Allison, that phrase comes up again and again as one of the most delightful and warm and happy phrases that I think human beings have managed to utter. When I applied to UCSF, I described myself as a refugee from theoretical physics. I jumped into neuroscience. Allison's work inspired me to switch to neuroscience, and this strangely, bizarrely connected set of pinkish buildings on a hill in the fog became my new shelter. And in many ways, intellectually, scientifically, emotionally, Allison was that shelter for me at UCSF, and I've learned so much from her. we've all talked about all of the warmth and just genius at intuiting other people's emotions and really resonating with them that flowed from Allison, her empathy, her joy, and the comfort of knowing that she also worried and struggled with perfectionism. And it's a testament to Allison's really natural gift at this, that when each of us think about her, we think about those moments when she really connected deeply with us, and in just a few words summarized what we were feeling, maybe without even having recognized it ourselves. And beyond that, she didn't just commiserate with us, and she pushed us just a little bit to move towards the better versions of ourselves, to be stronger scientists, to be better colleagues, and to unshackle ourselves from self-doubt, and to have rich and supportive personal relationships. And I found that friendship with Allison helped me in profound ways to find that in my own life. And I love her for that. And when I got my faculty position a few years ago, I wrote to a lot of faculty at UCSF who were my shelter and my place, my nest from which I fledged anew, and wrote to them and said thank you for helping me put all the pieces together. And I just found it so touching that that's what was brought up again and again, that Allison knew how to put all the pieces together. And I like to think about all that love that she poured out, and it really is that love that she had, flowing back to her from each of us, that we gave back pieces of that to her, and most importantly, from her family, that it flows back to her through Michael and Sam and Alec, and that she really had put all the pieces together for herself. And I just wanted to give her a strong work, my dear. Thank you.
So I wrote Michael a letter. The only thing is I just gave it to him. And with his permission, I want to share it with everybody. Dear Michael, ever since learning of Allison's death, you and the boys have been in my thoughts. I bought an evocative card, which you have now, a songbird singing illuminated in lamplight and crescent moonlight. For weeks, I wrote this letter to you over and over in my head, not having the courage to face the unfair and terrible reality and to put words on paper. Her loss is incomprehensible, we all know that. But today, as we remember Allison, I want to share some thoughts. And I want to talk really or write about Allison's courage. First, her intellectual courage, because we celebrate her fabulous scientific achievements, as we've heard today, incredible achievements, exploring neural circuits and computations for birdsong. First by herself, and then in partnership with you. The work flowered. It's comforting to know that the legacy of what she started and what you both started and shared in the lab will live on with you and future discoveries and this incredible group of students and friends, but the students who have talked about Allison today. And you can see this enormous academic legacy in front. We've seen it today, and it's really very special. It took, and it still takes, courage to work in this research area in the face of unimaginative naysayers who could not see what is evident to all of us here, which is that this is a fabulous and powerful system for understanding the logic of language learning in developmental critical periods. We all know that. This letter is also about Allison's personal courage. I met Allison, actually, I'm thinking it was maybe almost 30 years ago. It was a really long time ago. Initially, we shared many paths and intersections with Harvard, David Hubel, the Society of Fellows, Paul Patterson, Story Landis, and Sue McConnell. But our friendship really blossomed once we were, the three of us, Sue and I and Allison, were all in California launching our labs at UCSF and Stanford. I was the first along this career path, but definitely not the most clued in. In fact, Allison, with her knowledge of human behavior, AKA psychiatry, and Sue, with her understanding of animal behavior, dogs and horses, were far more sophisticated. And so it was that we began to meet every 6 to 8 weeks for dinners to discuss, complain, agonize, to celebrate successes and failures, and the strangeness of being women at work in the world of men. We called these meetings Girls' Night Out. They were wonderful evenings, and I know Luann and Corey then joined us, although maybe you guys were having separate meetings. I don't know. And moreover, I think that probably Ulrika, you were having separate meetings too, because Allison made us all feel as if our meetings with her were the only ones, and they were really special. Yeah, yours were with the phone. We had dinner. Anyhow, nothing was out of bounds. For example, I just have to say we discussed why Gaussian distributions can have very long tails, and why we loved taking a log of the distribution. We discussed how to dress for work so that we were not mistaken for secretaries. This is not something trivial in those days, something that happened all too often. We complained about life and work without feeling a need to solve any problem whatsoever. We just complained. Something our male colleagues didn't and still don't quite get, although, I don't know, maybe David, maybe wherever he is, maybe David got it, I'm not sure. We shared, you don't have to fix the thing, you can just listen. Anyhow, we shared stories of misbehavior among our students and postdocs, and we discussed solutions based both on principles of human and dog behavior. Both are equally effective, I learned. We shared our loves and our losses and our dreams and priorities, and we talked about the struggle of both living life to the fullest and doing science to the fullest. In those days, Allison was chronically late to dinner. I guess we've already said this, she was late to everything. But actually, over time, we watched in awe as she collected and understood herself deeply. And she established her priorities. And her priorities, some of those were having a great lab and having children. Those were really top priorities. Later, when you and Allison found each other, it was really wonderful. You shared so much with her, and it was perfect. And then you embarked on the courageous path to create a family, those miraculous, beautiful boys, really miraculous. And, you know, in June 2004, it was a big birthday for Allison, and we didn't quite realize yet how successful you'd been in this arena of starting a family. Sue, and I think Luann was there too, and I were at a McKnight meeting in Aspen. And Allison didn't come that year for some reason, and a big birthday was coming up, and we searched the stores to find a perfect gift for her. Success. What else but a vest? In those days, she wore vests all the time, but this was no simple vest. It was silk embroidered in gold filigree. It had a green silk lining, I think, with braids, shaped to fit her very svelte figure, and hugely, hugely expensive. We never would have spent that on ourselves. So we splurged. I think we gave it to you, Michael. Were you there at that meeting? And we gave it to you to take home to Allison. And then the even better news, the vest would not fit. Sam and Alex were incubating. It was great. Michael, together, we're all here to celebrate Allison's life, and it was an incredible life. You and she actually achieved the most important goals that she had articulated all those years ago at the Girls' Night Out dinners and set for herself. She lived with intention, passion, and intensity. She left you and Sam and Alex to carry the torch, and it will burn brightly.
So I'm Michele. I was Allison's first graduate student. And I think one thing that set her apart is something that's been mentioned several times, is her openness to new experiences. And I think it required constant honesty on her part as well as courage. And she displayed this in so many ways, including not being afraid to solicit the opinions of everybody over the work that we were doing. And you might have expected a junior faculty might try to limit this kind of thing a bit in the push of getting new papers out or even proving that you could do it by yourself, maybe. But Allison was having none of that. She was constantly running ideas by people and then immediately coming back to me and telling me what she thought. And I think we were richer for it. So one example comes from our recordings of the song Selective Neurons in juvenile zebra finches, and these were hard-won data. Just scraping together enough neurons to actually seriously analyze took much longer than I expected. So you can imagine my shock when it was time to set about analyzing them to realize there was no set pipeline for analysis. And it was actually up for debate how best to analyze these neurons. And so I thought, well, let's start with the t-test, forward versus reverse songs, statistically rigorous. But one of the postdocs, Frederick, thought we could do better and suggested a D prime. And Allison was open to this, but polled others who suggested ROC curves, peak rates, ratios, normalize in different ways. And I tried them all. And it was a tremendous amount of work. And there were certainly dark moments when I wished that someone would just tell me what the best way was already. But that slow, messy process that Allison embraced, I think, taught me a deeper lesson about neural coding and also a big take-home message about the jumbled and provisional nature of science, which is a lesson that serves me well today as a science writer. So Allison also had a tremendous ability to inspire me to do my best. And I'm going to tell a writing my first paper story. We met up one day to discuss my first draft of my first paper, and I had never before written a scientific paper. And so you can imagine it was a very long conversation. And with both of us taking notes. And at the end, as I was leaving her office, she said, "Oh, you forgot this." And she gave me her notes, and this is what she gave to me. Thank you. And you know what? It meant something to me. You can just see the energy leaping off of that piece of paper, and I kept it with me. And I used it as a sort of talisman throughout the subsequent drafts. And it was true guidance. And this sort of thing happened all of the time, where Allison's charm and wit and energy would leave me sort of enveloped in a bubble of can-doism and wanting to produce something true and beautiful in science. So this happened last spring too, when I came here to San Francisco to visit Allison, bringing along my whole family and visited with Michael and their kids. And as much as I was alarmed by how frail she had seemed to have become, I was so encouraged by her lively spirit, and we gabbed for hours and had a glorious day. We gabbed about science, we talked about animal models of mental illness, we talked about music lessons, kids, schools, and it was truly glorious. It started with a pancake feast. Maybe this is, whoops. Can you help? Can you get to the last picture, please? There. It started with the pancake feast. Then we went crabbing on a pier at Crissy Field, and that's this picture here with my daughter. And then we took a walk in the Mission to visit my old apartment, and we stopped at a playground, and then we had a crab dinner. And of course, the chief instigator and organizer of this was Michael, who some of you may know has a nickname. Well, when he was a postdoc, his nickname was Dr. Fun. And that was in full force that day. And as ever, I came away inspired, seeing in plain sight the ingredients for a full life, even when it was slipping away much too soon. Consisted of family, friends, science, and ice cream whenever possible. Thank you.
So I want to start by thanking whoever put together the video to make it this to be completely impossible to get through without breaking up. So I barely made it through my comments that I did at the Birdsong meeting in neuroscience, and so we will see what happens today. But luckily, I think I have a little bit less to say because people have said it, much of what I want to say already. But I made the mistake of not preparing comments is my want. So we'll see what happens. So the first thing as many people have said, what it is like to write with Allison. So maybe I'll back up. Let me do this. So I was kind of an unusual case in terms of joining Allison's lab. So I initially came here as a postdoc with Ken Miller. Fresh as getting a PhD in mathematics from UC Berkeley. So I had just, and maybe different than many people here, I don't remember the first time I met Allison. That's probably says more about my mathematician's memory for lack of specifics in some abstract thing where the past becomes all measured, and it's much more what gets put together in the end. But I do recall that I had done some stuff on, some work on sequence learning, and had learned as kind of the atmosphere of the Keck Center that Allison was starting a new lab doing birdsong sequence learning, sounded kind of interesting, and so I would just decide, well, what about if I approached her and said, maybe I'll give a lab meeting about what I know about kind of artificial networks and sequence learning. And then I don't really remember kind of what happened so much after that, except that I went to the Doupe lab meeting every week. And then I was reading background materials, and then something particular about some of the birdsong system caught with what I was doing, and then it kind of went from there. And then I talked to her about this, and then I was a joint postdoc. And in fact, actually, my second year, so I had funding as a 2-year postdoc on mathematical sciences postdoc with NSF. Second year was mostly working on this model with Allison. And the model was an abstract model of song learning, the whole process, and there was different populations of neurons for 2 different populations in HPC and 1 in RA and 1 in the anterior forebrain, and there were plastic connections everywhere, and everything happened all at once. And Allison was super into this, the idea of having this thing, and it's quite amazing what a stretch. I have no idea what she thought of this guy that just came into lab meeting and it came up with this crazy model and we talk about ideas. But I think every single person here knows like how incredibly exciting it was to talk to Allison. It was just, you would go in and it would be great. Not only great, but it would be exciting and it would be back and forth and it would be very intense and crazy, right? And then you'd leave. And then you'd have to try to figure out what was going on and what to put it together, and you'd do it again. And I find, the range of people that had that experience in terms of dealing with Allison, it's just, it's mind-blowing. So anyway, I went on and did this incredibly, it got complicated model to try to put it into a published paper, which had various versions. It was a single paper, then got split into 2 papers and several things. And this is one of the comments from one of the reviewers at some point in one of the drafts. So one of the things she did was that when I left the lab, she gave me a T-shirt with that quote stamped on with a birdsong kind of thing in the beginning. So of course, I'm incredibly proud of those papers. They're, I think, quite rigorous in their own way and had a lot of stuff in there and incredibly packed. 14 figures each paper or something crazy like that. And so that's what it was like writing a paper with Allison. The other thing, so here's what she did when I left the lab to start my own lab at University of Maryland, now at University of Texas at San Antonio. But this is a book of the zebrafinch book by Zahn. She put together a collage. This is what she wrote. And it kind of exemplifies how much every person in the lab, how much she cared about what was each stage of what was happening. There was a celebration, there was a going away. This is one of 4 different presents that she had to go out and organize and stuff like that. And you know, she really obviously cared about all the people. I think it's pretty obvious. But one of the things that I kind of want to finish with is that I had the same feeling in terms of preparing my comments for the Society for Neuroscience, in the sense of thinking about how Allison did what she did, and thinking it's like, I have no idea how it's just impossible to do things. And one of the things I thought about today is a comparison about Steve's comments. So if you take all of Steve's 10-minute meetings and say he has 2 hours of those 10-minute meetings a day, that would be 12 hours of Allison's 1-hour meetings to do the same kind of thing. So she had, I don't know where the time came from for all the things that she did, because when you met with her, you had her there for the whole time and went on late. I mean, obviously she was late, but that she could do anything seems completely incredible to me. Given that what each thing that she did, how much was there when she did it. And so I kind of wanted to end with, I think everybody that knew Allison knew how much she worried about lots of things, whether things were good enough and whether things would work out. And she felt responsible for everybody and everything in some ways, but she's particularly felt responsible for the science. She was responsible to science, and that's why you had to take forever and many, many drafts and the papers came out, and that's why they're so good. She felt very responsible for the members of her lab, and I think that you know and see that here. She felt responsible for the entire field, about what it was going and how it was doing and how everybody in the entire field was doing. And you know, it was beyond the field and for her department, that it was all her responsibility. And the only way, so I can't imagine how she did it. What one of the things that, in terms of thinking about this, you knew that she, all that time that she was 100% with you, she was also thinking and acting on a completely different level of being organized in the way that Steve was talking about, above this disorder. And there's no way that she could do all that without her kind of, she was playing like chess when everybody was playing checkers. It's just like the amazing intellect, breadth, energy, and devotion to all of this. Without that, with the responsibilities that she took on, it would be completely impossible. So I think we all know kind of all of this and have plenty to thank her for. And I have very little to say except for that one of my undergraduate students in the lab said, "That's you?" On the top, it looks like Matthew Broderick or something, you know, Ferris Bueller or something. So anyway, I'll end my comments there, but I think it's all pretty clear. You've heard lots of stuff that's all the same about what an incredible human being that Alice was.
So that concludes the program. A wonderful celebration of a wonderful person. I'd like to thank everybody who participated, and you all are invited to the reception that follows. Thank you very much.